All righty. Give Melanie a sec to go live here. Okay. Welcome to the February 4th, 2025 meeting of the Pœrtner Park Ad-Hoc Group. I have no opening remarks. I'm anxious to get started. We've got some great maps that TerraSpec put together to kick around and a couple of other things, some decisions to make already, which is great. So we'll start with a roll call.
Chair Rambo,
Here.
Member Stevens,
Here.
Member Roughton, Member Scott,
Here.
Member Tupper,
Here.
Member Raguraman, Member Jaxie. And we have a quorum.
Member Jaxie? Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, he's over there. Oh, yeah, okay. So first is approval of the minutes from the January 7th, 2025 meeting. Did anyone find any errors in the minutes? Hearing none, I'm going to declare them approved as my example Ms. Stevens typically does, and move on to public comments. Do we have any public comments?
No, we have no.
All right.
No one here and no one online.
Okay, so we will move to the overview of the meeting materials with Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the group, first of all, thank you for being here tonight. I know the meeting turnaround's a little quick, and certainly we're doing our best to give you the information you want in a timely manner, so we all don't forget what we said at the last meeting, despite the minutes. And so again, thank you for being here tonight. In preparation of tonight's meeting, a number of items have been provided to you as part of the packet. I just want to briefly go over those items so you can kind of understand what is available and in some instances what is not, with an explanation to follow later in the meeting. First of all, the department has been working with TerraSpec, our consultant on this matter, Ken Keitel, and Mr. Keitel prepared at first two maps. One was the site distance analysis of the existing access point on Pinkin Road into the park site. And then the other was what I would describe as a base map. That base map was developed through our discussions at our last meeting at Old Pond School. And as you recall, at that meeting, we had a board with the plans sheet on it. And the department, just as you talked, added comments to it. And for the most part, those were the comments Mr. Keitel received from the department. Those two items were provided to you as part of the, I believe, Friday email. Over the weekend, I was reviewing the plan and thought, there sure are a lot of these little symbols at one location on the park property. That location was the former site of the single-family dwelling. And so I asked Mr. Keitel if he could basically pull out an insert of that, maybe make it a little easier to read and understand. So that's the third map that's been provided. Previously, you received information from the structural engineer that was engaged by TerraSpec. So I went ahead and provided that again so you can kind of see in black and white and the photographs, the condition of the bank building, which at least one member of the Department of Planning and Parks was a great disappointment. And that person is speaking into the microphone right now. And so you have that information as well. So of the tasks that were given to the Department of Planning and our consultant, Mr. Keitel, I think we've addressed all of them. First and foremost, we did the site distance analysis. Secondly, we did a quick structural analysis of the bank building, the largest of the structures that remain on the property, and then the maps themselves. Two versions. Same information, but two versions. So that's the information for you tonight. as we go to the next item, which is the discussion of the site design, I'll go into a couple more details and then I'm going to let Mr. Keitel add anything. And then, Mr. Chair, with your permission, we want to hear from you. So,
Okay.
thank you. Well, with that, we'll jump right in. So, Mr. Keitel, Ms. Ripito, and I had a discussion after the last meeting. And at that last meeting, the group members asked that we provide 3 options. And so that was the direction that was given to Mr. Keitel. There would be 3 options or 3 maybe different plans. And so as Mr. Keitel prepared the options, he came to a conclusion that that's going to be very difficult because what we're asking for isn't necessarily that complicated. Trails, parking, etc. And so we all had a conversation and the department, hopefully with your concurrence, decided let's build the base map and the options can come from the base map. That way we can kind of move the pieces of the puzzle around if they're not where you want them. And then the options will follow as we refine our discussions of the improvements and then ultimately have our final option. But the intent was not to ignore your direction. It was more so to provide you something that, for all intents and purposes, is the workable representation of your thoughts and then go from there. So I think the key components I just want to highlight, and I will not spend much time on them because, again, Mr. Keitel is the author and you all are our editors. But one key element is that we are showing a circular or semicircular drive and parking access. And that means there's 2 points of ingress egress onto Hinken Road. The ingress off of Hinken Road is generally at the same location of the existing drive. The new access, which is that which would lead you out of the site, is further, what I will call to the east, or I should say south, based upon the north arrow, so my apologies. The intent of that is quite simply functionality and safety. Safety probably being the most important in that it complies with our site distance requirements, which means we can get people in and out of the park site safely with this design. The second part of that area I want to emphasize is that clearly from our discussions at our last meeting, the group members stated we don't want to overpark. So I thought Mr. Keitel did a very nice job of integrating the access and the drive aisle into the parking. And as you can see, we have a limited number of spaces. Those spaces, however, are visible from Hinken Road. And I'll let Mr. Keitel explain. He did try to do the parking down below by where the bank building is. And there was just some issues with grades. But I'll let him go in more detail. The thing that threw me a curve, and it's the last item I'll mention before relinquishing the podium, is on the plan sheet, there's a number 10, and it's a big white rectangle. And I thought, oh, the bank building, he's figured it out. We can save it. And he said, no, the bank building, according to the structural engineer, is a little too far gone, but it is a great location maybe for a larger shelter. And so that's what that represents. So with that, I'll take any questions on my brief remarks, but again, with the permission of the chair, I'd like Mr. Keitel to maybe give his overview or just some comments, and then we'll jump right in. Thank you.
So my initial thought when I saw this was that this was a really great effort. It's a strong start. And I think it was exactly the right approach not to get all wrapped around the axle trying to do three examples. We kind of do that a little bit more frequently than we have to. We can adjust from here and get exactly what we want. And so what I'd like to request is, and so good job. And good job to you guys too. And it was a quick turnaround. So I'm very impressed. I would like to, if it's feasible, to split your presentation into 2. talk about the site, the parking area specifically, and because I've got a lot of questions about that, and then we can go to the other page if that's workable for you to present it that way.
The other page being.
The larger park map with all the amenities and showing the paths and so on and so forth, because we've got the one that you're calling the master plan site distance. That's worthy of a separate discussion in my. Does anyone disagree with that?
That's fine.
Okay. Leslie, speak up if you have anything to add. We
I
don't want to
will.
ignore you.
I
All
will.
right. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that, because you're showing some. I'll throw out some of the difficulties I have here. We were concerned about the site distance. I can't figure out exactly what your profile is demonstrating to us. I'm confident that you've figured out that we have adequate site distances. But my larger question would be, why do we have why do we kind of swoop through in an arc? Why don't we have bi-directional at one location or the other? Because it seems like a lot of extra pavement that's not getting us any parking. And it looks like you have a number of the spaces look like it's parallel parking, which is perfectly fine with me. I can parallel park in my sleep, but a lot of people can't. So those are the kinds of questions that I'd like you to talk through.
I'll be happy.
Mark.
First off, as far as the profiles that you're talking about, the sections down below.
Push the button till the red light comes on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
We can hear you, but or recording.
No, that's
it
fine.
is silence if you don't have.
Unless I can't. The profiles that are down below are basically, if you were to take a section right down the sight line. Those sight lines are shown on plan view.
Mhm.
And I think it says below it 280 foot. That is the minimum sight distance requirement for that speed road. Okay, and then basically there are requirements as to where that's cut. You have to have the driver 14 and a half feet minimum back from the edge of the road. It has to be, you're looking to the right and to the left. That cross section shows what the grade is. That dashed line shows that when you're looking out, the line that you're seeing coming from the eyeball on the profile is where the direct line of sight is going over to the car that you see at the other end of the profile. And that dash line that goes on down, that is the existing grade that's there. So you can see it's a clear view as far as the grade is concerned. Now I need to qualify that we've achieved that sight distance because there are some trees, especially looking to the right, which when you're coming out, you're looking to the right or looking to the east. You're going across this huge valley, so to speak. Now, you have to also realize that that's an exaggerated vertical scale. So lengthwise, it looks like it's a canyon, and it's really not. It's 5 times greater going vertically than it is going horizontally. So basically in an inch, you're going 20 feet horizontally, and you're only going 5 feet vertically. So, and that's just to show, make it visually clear that there's no obstruction. If we drew it to scale in both of them, it would just more or less look like a flat line.
So this isn't even marginal, is my understanding of what you just said. This is perfectly safe on that speed of road, plus some fudge factor, because I know people with Porsches and hot rod motorcycles that have gone 100+ miles an hour.
And that is based on St. Louis County's criteria for that design speed road.
Okay.
Now, the caveat to that is that if you're looking to the right, along the right of way, we have some trees. And so we will have to either remove some trees along the roadway, or we'll have to limb them up so that we can get that sight line.
So there's one big pine tree. Is that kind of, and remember I called you and asked where, I said they were digging and it looked like they were tearing up some bushes. Is that vegetation?
Well, the pine tree at the existing access, that large one.
There's two large pine trees at the existing driveway.
Yeah, on either side.
Okay, I'm talking about on the entrance side, okay? I'm talking all about the exit, because the exit, which is the one furthest east,
The new one.
the new one,
Yeah.
correct. That's the one that's of concern.
Oh, okay.
I'm not worried about entrance at all, because you're not having to look both directions to pull in. You basically are coming and you're pulling in.
Okay, so there are a handful of lilacs there that would be nice to save just because they harken back to the way it was, 100 years ago, because I'd be surprised if those things were,
And
younger than.
And that's fine, because you don't have a car sitting in the driveway looking both directions in order to see, because you're coming off of the roadway, pulling into the site. So there really isn't a sight distance issue on that entry side.
So I'm arguing for having a pre-surgeon cut the limbs up 14 feet high and get them out of our way. The tree is still thriving and it's there and it adds drama to the site, but we don't have any sightline issues. Is that, you offer that as a solution?
There's not a sight line issue on the entrance side.
But there still will be. Even
And there won't be a sight line issue on the exit side as long as as far as grade is concerned. The reason it's located right where it is because that is the top of the hill on the road.
Mhm, mhm.
So you can see in both directions.
Yeah.
Now, irregardless, or that's not even a word, regardless of the terrain, the trees are the only things that are of a bit of a concern to me, and that's solvable. We could either limb them up, like I said, or if it happens to be right smack dab in front of the car, then that one may have to be removed.
Okay, so maybe one tree and the rest of them we can.
The way I was looking at it, the trees that are further east, where the roadway actually kind of curves back around to the south, there's a group of trees over there. They're all deciduous, I think, at that point, that can easily be limbed up, and you can see then through the vertical trunks. So I don't see that's going to be a problem at all.
Okay, so can you address the reason for the separate entrance and exit? Is it just a matter of flow, or to reduce the size of the connection to Henkin, or?
I don't want anybody leaving the site from the existing location. The site distance is not adequate in either direction for leaving there. So that necessitates it's one way.
So
Okay.
You're solving the problem. You can turn in with the.
You can turn in without any
desirable
sight
sight.
distance.
Yeah, okay.
You just can't leave.
What about am I right in guessing that your parking spaces are parallel?
They are parallel. And the reason that they're parallel is because it uses up less space.
Less.
And it was my understanding from this committee that you only wanted like 3 or 4 spaces in the first place. And so I've got 10 spaces here. If you don't want that many, we can start lopping them off.
I think 10 is kind of a good, no?
Okay. Question. You've got parallel parking on both sides of the drive.
Yes, sir.
If you took parallel parking off one side, wouldn't there be enough space for angle 45-degree parking on one side?
Yes, sir, there would.
And since it's a one-way thing, it'd be easier just to pull in to a 45-degree space. That would be my only thought, because not many people know how to parallel park anymore. That's quite a ways down the road.
Well, that's excellent though. And I can certainly,
that's my thought is put them all on one side and angle park them. That's,
And that's an excellent comment, and I have already taken a look at doing that. We end up putting a little more pavement in because it uses up a little more pavement, getting the cars in at, so let's say a 45-degree angle or whatever angle we want to put them in. And obviously, if we put them in at a 60-degree angle, you're going to get less parking. If you're going to put it in a 30, you'll get a little more parking. But we'll have somewhere around that, 8 to 10 parking spaces. Either way, I did it to reduce the amount of paving as much as I possibly could.
plus I think parallel parking on the wrong side of the street. People have trouble parallel parking on their side of the street. So I just think it creates a problem.
And the only reason why, and I agree with you, I don't use parallel parking very often. And the only reason why I did this is I was not really anticipating that you're going to have 10 cars there.
I agree.
I've just kind of like, over at Bluffview, we have parallel parking all on the inside of the loop. And people pull up there and they park in there, but there's usually 5 or 6 cars. So there, plenty of room to pull in and pull out without actually having to back in and back out. So
Okay.
that was the main reason.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes, please.
if I may offer a suggestion, I and Mr. Keitel and Mr. Scott have maybe already thought of this as well as the rest of you, but I would remove the 3 spaces that are on the west side of the improvement, those 3 parallel spaces, and then keep the ones on the east side and make them a 45. I'm an advocate for the 45-degree parking, I think.
Okay, if I can make a comment here. Another reason that I went with the narrow parallel parking is just the flow of the trail system rather than having to bring it all the way out. If you notice on the south end, I have a substantially long retaining wall there so that we don't have to grade all the way down to that little depression area, that's about how far down the grading goes if we don't put the retaining wall in. Now, if we come in and we put angled parking in on that side, then we're going to create a situation where we have a lot taller wall, or we just make from basically where the number 4 is on the parking lot? From that point going to the exit, that would end up having to be just a driveway, a one-way drive. And all the parallel or all the angular parking would be between the 4 and the entrance.
Well, I think these are minor issues that you can work out as best you see, but
Oh, for
those
sure.
are just my comments of, you've considered it, and I think I really like the plan. I think
Thank you.
It's really well done and well considered.
Yeah, so I'll ask the department then, Joe, how much of this do we have to kind of start nailing down? 10 spaces, that seems like a lot. We were thinking fewer. 10 spaces seems like a good, in the right range, particularly if we can consider a handful of them with the permeable, the parking material that the Park Service uses. We've talked about it a lot, I forget the name, but something that's less pavement and more natural. Are you familiar with the product?
I am. I'm not an advocate of that.
Okay, so if it's good enough for Missouri Parks Department, why are you not an advocate? Is it just not last the way you wish it would? Or?
Well, you run into issues with how it's striped, how you actually stripe. If you're talking about.
Oh, no. If you go to, there's a number of, again, state park facilities that just have the parking and it's along along the entrance road and it's just there. And it's
Uh-huh.
not striped or anything. I mean, they don't try to stripe it. They just, people, if they show up to an event and there's going to be 100 cars, they're just parking alongside of it. And instead of parking in the ditch or in the field,
Mhm.
they're parking on a solid circle. That's something, I mean, we could get back to a half dozen spaces and then have a handful more if there's a big family event or something.
And I would be an advocate of that if, for instance, on the spaces that Joe asked to remove,
Mhm. Yeah. Exactly.
come in and turn those into, the Grasscrete or whatever,
Yes.
particular brand we use. I like, it used to be called Ritter Rings. It has another name now, but it's actually a PVC, that's about, 4 inches deep. And they're, I want to say it's a 3 inch or 4 inch diameter PVC pipe that are all glued together into a mat. And then you actually put that down, you put sod over the top of it. You don't have the issue with the sun baking the concrete and killing the grass. It basically does fine, and yet you can carry a fire truck on it.
I'd love to just consider something like that, and especially in that spot opposite the parallel parking.
Right.
And if we could get some angled spaces, yeah, I think it's
Yeah, these are all details.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, we're at a master plan stage. I've probably put more design development into this master plan than most master plans. So, I mean,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is very detailed.
it's very.
You're talking about something like Ritter Rings, but what about?
You know that.
What's your, yeah, oh yeah. I'm an architect.
okay.
So what about that versus porous pavement? What's your experience? I've got some concerns about that. That looks like it falls apart pretty much.
Depends on what kind of porous pavement you're talking about. If you're talking about porous concrete, if you're talking about porous asphalt, or if you're talking about porous pavers. 3 different things. Asphalt, I would not recommend to anybody. Concrete it breaks down after a while. I mean, have you ever seen porous concrete? I mean, it kind of looks like Rice Krispies if you put it down on the.
That I've seen, yeah.
I mean, and that I've used before. My preference is to go ahead and use permeable pavers. But once again, now you're just adding pavement.
Exactly right.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
And the idea was to get away from anything that feels or looks like paving in favor of something that looks like grassy you can park on, sort of thing. So, okay, so we're completely tracking. I think this is a good discussion because the more you know about our preferences, the more you can narrow it down on the next pass. And so I don't think this was wasted effort, but I think we can, if we need to make any decisions on the locations, I'm ready to say, yeah, that's where our interest in egress are going to be. And the general concept of that parking, we just need to tweak it a little. Is that appropriate to provide that guidance, Joe?
Certainly, I believe it's appropriate for that particular component of the overall master plan, and when we can move on from there. I just have a couple of comments. When TerraSpec, Ken Keitel, and the city developed Glencoe City Park, one of the functions of the main walkway was also to provide emergency access to the residents that live on what I would consider the east side of the park when the Merrimack River floods up to 3rd Street and beyond. So we used Ritter Rings on either side of the walkway to expand it, but we didn't want it to look like a road. And so they worked out well. And I don't think most people realize that several inches of that either side of our walkway is actually have Ritter Rings, and there's sod there, and they can drive on it. They've driven on it, and it works very well. If you want to see an example of permeable pavers applied in the city, the trailhead at Ridge Meadows Elementary School, we did 10 parking spaces at the top of the trail, and those are the permeable pavers. They've done extremely well, at least in terms of longevity. They're a little more expensive, as Mr. Keitel mentioned, but if you want to see a couple of examples, we have them.
The parking lot at the MoBot, Missouri Botanic Garden, a good bit of that is those kinds of, and they're just spectacular. They look gorgeous and they're wonderful.
Oh, I applaud you all in wanting to have the park look more natural than manicured, so to speak.
Yeah.
Especially if we're gonna put the parking more in the neighbors.
Yeah.
View than we.
And before we leave the parking lot, could you just kind of go through your logic? Because the direction to Mr. Keitel was maybe to consider having the parking below down by the bank building. And
Okay, the main consideration, I mean, once again, we've got, as you can see, we've got a handicap parking space. We, by code, we need to have a handicap parking space. The slope of, if you've all been out there, the gravel road that goes down to the lower part of the bank barn, the lower level, that's at about a 15% slope. And granted, we could put an asphalt drive going down to a lower level, but we don't really have the adequate room to have a parking down there and get people turned around and back up. And then if you have a handicap parking space down there, then they've got no place else to go except down there. So it all led to making more sense to have the parking up above rather than trying to force something down below.
Yeah, those
So-
are great points. And you'd have a very expensive parking space with an unnatural looking retaining wall on the downhill side and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
Just we'd be spending all our money on
walls,
infrastructure that
yep.
we can get by having a flatter spot up by.
Correct.
So I think
I also think that you put it there, that's up near the entrance that you're showing here. Which,
The handicap parking space?
no,
Is that?
if you put the parking down near the barn
Mhm.
at the lower level, that's moving it up towards the entrance you're proposing here, which you're proposing only as an entrance. So you would have trouble getting people out there. You would have to still put a drive someplace so that you could get to someplace where you could have reasonable sight lines for exiting
Exactly. You would end up putting that same loop
in there without.
It's
any-
just that
yeah.
people would go down, have two-way traffic to come back up,
Yeah.
make a right, and then go on out. So,
There won't be enough cars there.
Right.
And it's not like there's gonna be dump trucks parked there, things like that. So I hope, maybe not.
well, the intent too would be with budget considerations taken into account. The island that would be created now by Hinken Road and the proposed access and parking area, that island of grass, we would landscape. So as we could screen much of the parking, at
Yeah.
least the car itself, maybe not so much the activity associated with it, but we can certainly do landscaping.
Just let the honeysuckle grow up in there.
Well, that's within our budget.
yeah, and then part of this discussion is, saving a few bucks where we can, but I have to say, I am thrilled. I hate as badly as anyone to see that bank barn go because of because of my great family story. But you know what? This is spectacular solution, this bank barn style shelter concept. I just think it's a spectacular solution. And I love the stonework on the foundation, but that we could save money there by some cementitious parging or whatever, which is more in character with the poor folks that lived there in the first dang place. And so there's ways to save money on that building and make it just a great evocative structure. And we can put a little plaque there to, tell the bootleg history. And I think it would be within our budget. And is the idea to put the restrooms in the bottom
no,
half
sir.
of that? What?
No, I have, right now, I was like, okay, as you know, the department has some items stored over there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was thinking, we've already got this all dug out. We're gonna have to tear out the existing foundation. Structural engineer said, we can't really
Yeah.
utilize any of that. So, but I wanted to create a similar style. It doesn't really have the same look. And like you said, we could easily put a plaque on the side that shows the old bank barn and why that shelter looks the way it does. And then I basically thought, well, it's a good place for the shelter to be because it's centrally located. I can get ADA access down to it. And then down below, that can be utilized by the park department as storage or whatever needs to be done.
I was hoping to save some money on the restroom facility that you show separately, and also to talk about the viewing structure, which seems a little bit superfluous. If we have this nice, probably underutilized shelter that can serve more, that structure could serve several purposes. And so Joe may feel like he really needs a storage structure, and this is as good as any place to put it. And I understand that, but it's really a park. And so I'd suggest at least thinking about it or talking it over before we decide that we have a separate restroom facility and a separate shade structure and so forth, unless you guys have put a lot of discussion into it already.
Well, the reason that we were not utilizing the lower level for anything else is getting ADA access to it. You can't get down there unless we come in and we do a lot of
you got the same
grading.
slope, you got the same driveway slope problem
Yeah.
that you had.
Correct. I'm saying service vehicles can go down 15% slope, but if we come in and we try to get ADA ramp down to the lower level, we're going to be going all over the place to get it down there.
So what we're calling the service drive number 18, that's strictly for park service vehicles, and we're not going to allow any public traffic on that road. Is that kind of the?
Personally, I don't see why, a person couldn't drive their car down. I mean, you're not going to drive down there if you're disabled, but drive down there, I guess you could park. I guess I would offer that you have it closed off only because it's not going to be visible from the street. And if you've got police periodically patrolling it, if you've got somebody down there back behind the bank barn,
Yeah.
you're not going to see them.
Well, if it's only 8 feet wide, I think that would be problematic because there could be people walking along and some people are rude and some people are.
I
Yeah,
agree.
so, and we don't want to pave it any wider.
Mhm.
I was gonna suggest putting the handicap parking down there, space down there, but that wouldn't work out. There's too much turning around it. So. Okay, well, that's disappointing, but what about so
Mr. Chair, if I
Go ahead.
may, why don't you let Mr. Pito, Mr. Keitel, and I look at that lower level? Obviously, your statement regarding the necessity of storage maybe isn't as important as I thought it might be. And if we weren't to use it for a restroom or storage, what would be a good function for that lower level? Could we make it more of an appealing space for use? So if you could give us a little time to kind of work through that discussion, maybe we can come back with a couple of options for you to consider.
as long as it doesn't break the bank,
Yeah.
that would be the.
Is any of the existing septic system, being the septic tank and the drainage field, usable for the plumbing there?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Well,
As
the
part of-
drainage field, is that?
And that was, I'm sorry. That was another reason why we don't really, not gonna work very well trying to put the bathroom down there is because there's no place for a field. Where I've got it now, we've got that entire meadow area that we can utilize. And, nobody's gonna be the wiser that it's even there.
Right.
And we have to be, well, it's 50 feet, so that's not a problem, but we have to be a minimum of 50 feet away from the well with any kind of,
Right.
Well, we would be no matter where you. Yeah, I mean, just about anywhere in the.
oh yeah, over there is not a problem. 50 feet takes you up to the northern end of the, parking lot. So I mean, I just, I didn't think that you wanted it. I mean, to me, it makes a lot more sense to come in and put it right near where the parking
Yes,
is.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Where that shade structure is on the opposite, on the other side of the path, on the, I guess, the south side of the path there. That'd be an ideal location because people are gonna park and they're gonna wanna do their business before they walk down to the.
Correct.
or anything.
And the main reason that I didn't do it is one, on the notes that I had, we had viewing area. I was not 100% sure what our view would be from
yeah,
the new shelter. So that's why I kind of put this, it's a relatively small shade structure. And I thought this is the area that was shown to me to be the best view, kind of overlooking the lake and everything. So if we did some clearing and stuff and you sat under the shade structure, you'd have a really nice view. You're right. The bathroom could easily go there. It could actually go where we've got E, which is just identifying the existing driveway. I just was trying to get this structure, which is not necessarily that desirable to look at, from the view from the road. So that's why I kind of stuck it more over by itself. That was the main reason.
So Joe, I know I'm skipping around because I'm excited and I think this is a great plan. I apologize if you want to be more structured. I'm happy to try to accommodate that desire.
Far so good.
I think everybody's getting their chance to weigh in. I will say that we might need another shade-ish rain protection type structure down by the lake. We're gonna put a structure, gonna spend the money for a structure, might want to put it closer to the lake. So, families, baiting hooks in the sprinkles.
I do have a gazebo down there.
Do you? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So we can, I mean, we just
Well,
saved 20 grand.
And again, these don't all have to go in at once. Maybe the one big one, but I tell you, you can get somebody to put their name on it and it would be in memory of so-and-so. And I think we could build structures all over this place.
Yeah, that's kind of to Leslie's point, we can get some of our furniture built by the Boy Scouts or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so what would be next? Kind of talk through the pathways, or I think the layout is great. We would be tweaking it probably 20 times before we're done, but it's a worthy effort.
Okay, well,
The structural engineer confided to Mr. Keitel that he was surprised by the deterioration of the bank building's foundation. And he theorized that there might have been some kind of caustic liquid in that area.
Sure.
Said there was a certain smell that he got when he went in there.
I'm beside myself with happiness that we're gonna be able to present that story.
And also Ken said that both of them left happier than they
We
were.
were very happy. with me.
Okay, so man, on that bank, that bank barn, it appears from the photographs that the floor structure, the wood floor structure is sound and the wood is in good shape. The rafters are good, the beams are good.
I disagree with that. I ratted around.
Yeah, okay. Just looking at the photographs, it looks, granted, the foundation is no good. Is that wood salvageable? And being that it's old wood, that it could be donated to the Essen Log Cabin for their floor joists or roof rafters.
The wood itself, for the most part, looks like it's in good shape.
Yeah,
If you're talking about the structure itself, like reutilizing portions of
no.
it, the whole thing's racked one way and
yeah.
that's
I'm
not
just talking about taking it apart in pieces and reusing the wood members. I mean, even the beams could be, again, milled into, it's old lumber, so I'm sure it would be a lot nicer to use than brand new lumber. And if it could maybe save a few dollars on the Essen Log Cabin if that lumber was given to the contractor.
I think from the perspective of the ad hoc group and Mr. Ripito and I, if we didn't salvage some of those materials, particularly the ones that are in good shape, we failed. I think our practice has been, for the most part, from day one. And somebody demos something and they don't have a use for it and just say it's going to the landfill, we take it. Because we've used it in almost all of our park systems.
That siding, a lot of the siding is valuable.
Yeah.
You know, people pay good money for
Yeah.
old aged barnwood, but I think you'll be disappointed in the condition.
On that, it might be, I don't know what's
I
under
walked,
that.
I looked. I
under
mean,
that
I
asphalt,
dug into them. A lot of them,
Yeah.
I mean, they reminded me of the beams in the Tice home. The one that we.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was just looking at the photographs here of down in the lower level of that. Yeah, and it looks like that's good
Yeah.
wood there. I'm not looking at necessarily the studs in the wall or the sheathing. I don't know. Maybe that's good, but it looks like the actual wood structure, that wood is in good shape and could be reused.
Well, my thought, and this is only my thought, and you're the architect, I'm a landscape architect, so that tells you
Yeah.
about what you're going to get with the structure. But my thought here was that we could utilize some or a lot of that wood in the shade structure that we've got, that we're putting back in. My only concern there is you have a bank barn that for the most part has siding or cladding on it that has protected that wood all these years.
Yeah.
And if we come in and we actually, make the shelter or build portions of the shelter out of it, that it's going to expose it to sunlight and water and everything else, and it may deteriorate a lot faster. But what it could be done, my thought here on the shelter was that we would use, Core-10 steel, corrugated Core-10 steel on the roof.
Yeah.
And why not go ahead and use a lot of the joists or whatever as the underlayment under the, on the underside of the shelter, which then would be very rustic
Sure,
looking
yeah.
also. So, but
Yeah.
you're the architect.
There's another barn that's completely collapsed and it's got some good siding there and I think we can salvage enough
Yeah.
to.
So,
Okay, we
But,
talked enough about wood. You guys have your direction on that. What's the next discussion item? Needs to talk about the-
I would like to maybe talk about the trail network. And so we talked about a couple of things, Mr. Keitel, and again, I'll just set the table, make sure the fork's on the right side, and then I'll let him take it from there. So we talked about different types of trails, from that which would be ADA accessible to what was described by Ms. Tupper as the bushwhacker, that which would take us into the, let's say, the more challenging portions of the site. And so that's the direction that was given to Mr. Keitel, and I'll let him take it from there.
okay, the very first thing that I did was I established the ADA accessible trails. Those are all paved.
The gray ones.
The gray ones that go around the perimeter and allow them access to the small gazebo that's up in the middle of each one of the meadow areas. And there's actually a loop. You can start at one end, go around, loop, and then go by the parking all the way and then loop back around. So you could, make that trek as many times as you wanted to, and it's basically accessible to everybody. And that, I think I've got that at 5 feet wide. I figured
Yes.
5 feet wide is wide enough for two people if they're just strolling along. But, we don't have a big trail and it's not encouraging, skaters and bikers and everybody to be using it all at the same time. It's just a comfortable width. I was proposing that it might be like a exposed aggregate concrete. That could then be, Merrimack river gravel or whatever, that's more natural than having just a plain white concrete out there or whatever. So that's just my thought there. Like I said, it basically goes around the transition area, all around the edge of the meadow. tried not to intrude into the meadow. It's got a 5% maximum slope, so we have no ramps or anything, just it goes from 0 to 5%.
No handrails.
There's no handrails.
Okay.
No, I don't have any handrails on this whole project. My only disappointment is that I can't get ADA access down to the pond.
Gonna ask.
Yeah,
It looks
it's
like
just,
right.
well, I mean, I've got a nice trail going down there. Most of all the dirt trails that you see, the dark ones, I think I've got the maximum slope on any of those is about, I think I had about 18% was the max. Now, there's probably 1,000 ways that you can do these dirt trails through the woods. So, I mean, I would not at this stage get picky about the direction or anything. Basically, what I did is I went and I set my template at roughly 14%, and I just went 14% kind of cross slope on down, and it's only a 2-foot wide single track, so it'd be real easy to cut it on in there. If you want areas that are steeper, you can easily do that, and you can make it go wherever you want. So please don't get hung up on the exact location of these natural trails. The only other thing that I was thinking would be nice, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time, was trying to get at least one leg to go down into the woods that was handicapped accessible. But without going all over the entire park, there's no way to get them down to the lake. It's just too steep.
So, I'm dominating this conversation. I'm sorry. Does anybody have any comments on that?
Okay. Well, I'm fighting you for dominance. I apologize for that too. Finding handicapped accessibility in the natural environment is very difficult, and I think this is an excellent approach to it. And yes, you're not going to get down to the pond unless you put in an aerial tram or something like that. And I think a lot of when the trail goes in, a lot of it's going to be ad hoc. As you're going there, you get to a point, there's going to be erosion here. Let's move it here and adjust it. I think if you look at this as the general path we're going to go, and we'll make a trail here. So I just again, as you admitted, I'm amazed at how much you've put on here so far and how good it looks. So I
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So, Mr. Chair, I would just draw your attention to one feature of the natural surface trails, and that is the trail around the water feature. That was a consensus item when we visited the site back at the beginning of January. And at our meeting later in January, is that we want full access around the water feature if we could. So that was a key element that was included in the directions to Mr. Vitale.
Yeah, I love the trail layout. It's a very good shot at what we're hoping to accomplish. I would love to see, I mean, Ken, is there any way up at the north end, the path that encircles the ADA path that encircles that field? It looks as though you could run along the contour line through the woods without violating your maximum slope concern and get down close to the at least the eastern projection of the pond, and then handicapped folks could get to the pond. Is that, am I?
I'm sorry, I was at the north end of the park, which is up.
See number one up there on, see D. You see D at the very top?
The D at the very top of the
Yeah,
meadow?
yeah.
Yes.
So if you come around to the north, make that long bend, and then you get to like number one, let's say, it looks as though you could follow contour lines down through the woods at a very shallow slope and get further down toward the lake.
Well, you can't.
Can't.
No, one, the problem starts to become, it's 1 in 20. So by the time you're all the way over at the lake, you're most of the way down, but the fact that
Gotta drop off at the end.
well, and also the fact of trying to build this 5-foot wide walkway on a slope,
Okay.
you're going to end up starting to have walls on
Quite expensive.
upper, yeah. I mean, it basically it.
Yeah, I ran into that at my house. So, and I did boulders. I built up with boulders.
So, Mr. Chair, I think what we've got is two types of slope. We have that slope that we always talk about, but that was a very steep hill I just walked up. But I think in this case, it's also that
The
side slope that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And obviously, and with ADA requirements, the side slope is a key crew.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Worth
Yeah.
asking.
Certainly.
We will get questions about the handicap accessibility, even though, as Steve suggested, it's real hard in the natural environment to make it. And this is a very worthy effort to accommodate folks that have mobility issues.
Yeah.
Plus, it's hard to put a 5-foot path through the woods
Sure.
and not take down any trees.
So this is a linear half mile of exposed aggregate concrete on a base of mushy topsoil. That could be expensive. Is there an alternative? Does 88 offer less expensive I mean, would it be like asphalt or something like that? Is that about all?
The problem that you run into if you switch to asphalt
I
is
would
the
hate that
width.
myself.
Well, is the width. Their pavers are 8 foot
Oh,
wide.
sure. Yeah.
And so it costs you a lot more to try to block that out and
Okay.
put a 5-foot wide path in. Didn't want an 8-foot wide. There are, since it's really 5% slope over most of it, and it's not exactly flat, I would say, much like the Katy Trail or the Al Foster Trail, that's perfectly flat, 2% slope maybe at best. You can come in with a compacted limestone,
Yeah.
and that would be fine. The problem with that is, and I'm sure if you talk to somebody from, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, they're probably spending tons and tons of money constantly repairing that aggregate surface.
It washes a lot.
Yeah, it wash, and every time you have a terrible rain, it's gonna end up with issues, and if I've got a 5% slope on it, you're gonna end up having to put ditches on the uphill side, and then, so I mean, it's, on the one hand, it sounds like it'll be less expensive, but then on the other hand, it ends up being more.
No, it was worth asking the question up front.
Yes, sir.
So here, the next question is the spur that I think I originally requested that goes from roughly the parking area down and angles off to the north, I guess the northeast, and meets up with Henkin at the bottom of the hill. Does that part have to be ADA because it's not going anywhere? In other words, can we just have what I'll call the north loop and the south loop covering the two fields, and then do some less expensive soft surface trail along Henkin Road downhill? Is that?
Yes, sir.
the-
Well,
Isn't
I'm trying
that
to-
First off-
I'm trying to value
no,
engineer here.
and let me explain what that is. That
bicycle
is
trail?
not an ADA trail.
Oh, it's not?
It's
Oh,
not. During our meeting that Melanie and Joe and I had, was Joe had a request to be able, he says that Henkin Road gets a moderate amount of bike traffic.
Oh.
And obviously they're heading south and they're having to go up that hill. It's a 1-lane road for all intents and purposes. So this was our attempt to get them off of the road
Yeah.
on the hill and bring them back up so that they can get back on flat surface.
Talked about that.
Very good.
So
Very smart idea.
that's an expensive stretch because I've got boulder retaining walls on both sides. So, and I mean, we can grade it out, but then you're chewing up the metal. I mean,
So
so.
Yeah.
I'm
not the
gonna
boulder-
ask,
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask about that. Because, and I walk that a lot. And I know the bicycle traffic that you're talking about. But at the same time, I'm really questioning whether we want to put a bike trail in the park. Largely because we had said we did not want bicycles on these trails. And I think that that would just encourage more bicycles in the park on other trails. But I don't know if the reason why you had that discussion is because there have been accidents along that road. I know people out there get aggravated with bicycles on all those roads when they're driving vehicles. But at the same time, it's a very low speed, and a lot of those automobiles are traveling faster than they should for the safety of those roads.
Have you kept that trail as close to the road as possible?
Yes, sir. It basically is. In order to get a reasonable slope, you know, I didn't
Right.
want to, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, in some areas, it's the same steepness as the roadway. So that was my maximum slope that I utilized, but I figured it's not going to matter because we've got the bikes at least off of the
Right.
roadway.
And the fact that at both ends, it connects back to the road. It
Exactly.
doesn't connect to any park trails, like, well, I get to the end, well, oh, instead of going back on Haken, I'm gonna turn right and go down this other trail. So it connects to a roadway at either end.
And that's why we
I
put the
think-
bike rack right there so that somebody, once they reach the top of the hill, got to go to the bathroom, at least there's a bathroom there for them. They can hop back on their
Yeah.
bikes and continue. Most people, I would think now, are not going to take a road bike that they're
Mhm.
riding all the roads and bother to come in and ride around
Right.
on a 5 foot wide trail in the
Right.
park. I don't think that that's going to happen very often.
The
That'd be
bikes
some-
I see on the road here are not mountain bikes.
Right.
So, Mr. Chair, it was an item I thought worth exploring, but I also see it as a very expensive item that was worth exploring. Because obviously we're paving the surface and the boulder retaining walls have an expense as well. So if the ad hoc group feels it's not a critical component of the overall master plan, certainly it would not create a problem for the Department of Planning and Parks if it was eliminated.
Well, I kind of kicked that off in the first place because in fact, I asked you whether we had a planned part of our trail system along Hankin Road, and you agreed that we did, and that was a very sensible solution for the problem of pedestrians. Leslie walks it without fear, but it's very steep there. And we have, I'm not concerned with cyclists because there's a couple kinds of cyclists. One kind, I mean, just road cyclists, and I've been a cyclist my entire life. And I have hammered up that hill literally countless times at crawling speed. There's that type of cyclist, and then there's the type that are just kind of out enjoying the weather and the air, and they're not going to go up that hill. They're going to turn. Yeah. So I don't think it's a huge safety issue. I saw it as a way to get another quarter mile of our trail system done, but not at the expense, not at $150,000 worth of trail work. That's not going to really help out. So can we back off and just make it a little bit wider soft surface trail for pedestrians? Because I'm with Leslie. I don't think we want bike, cyclists in the park at all.
Well, as you can see at that point of intersection in the, what would be the northeast corner at Haken Road, Mr. Keitel was also given the direction to provide that walking path. So folks like Ms. Tupper who use the road can go easily off the road and into the park on a dirt trail. So we've already kind of programmed that. If you want another segment of soft trail in lieu of the bike path with the boulder retaining wall, that certainly is an option.
So we don't need a retaining wall if we just have a soft surface path there, right?
Right.
It wouldn't have to be soft surface. It's just it's going to be steep for, it's not going to be ADA accessible.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay,
So, I mean,
sure.
I've got it right now, I've got it as a 6 foot wide chip and seal, which is the same as the parking lot,
Okay.
which is basically macadam. I mean,
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
seen it.
yeah.
And that's what I've got it. It can be set at that, and just come on up and pave that.
So if you can get a chip and seal and you can't get asphalt paving done?
Chip and seal, they come in and they put down the rock and they roll it. And then they come in with a truck and spray the oil on it. And then they spread the.
Yeah, it's a process and it's.
So, yeah,
expensive as
it's
asphalt,
not,
but-
it's not a paving machine.
I'd be for a trail there, but I would not be for any kind of paving there.
Well, let us take a look at that as well, and we'll come back with an option or two.
Yeah.
So I'd like to,
Is erosion an issue there? Is that part of this? I think, Leslie, I think part of the concern with paving it is because it would erode otherwise and it'd be a constant maintenance.
I don't know.
Wow.
Is there, I haven't walked it, so maybe, is switchbacking possible? I don't know, but I'm fine with the trail there. And in fact, I would use it if it was there, but not a paved one.
take it, ma'am. I'd like to move on to the next item.
Sure.
And
Wait.
manage our time if we
Okay.
can. And that is the dam and causeway. As you can see, Ken's kind of identified the dam and the rerouting of where the drainage goes now to the natural flow. And that is the one item that we've not yet addressed, and that was an assessment, an engineering assessment of the current dam and its stability. So that is in the works, but not complete.
Okay, Joe, I have had discussions on that.
Okay,
Called,
well, thank you.
Karen, I'm sorry, called Karen Frederick, that we work with over at Monarch.
Sure.
Levy, talked to her quite extensively. After our discussion, she said, yes, trees in dams are not a good idea at all. But they're there. It would be worse to come in and cut the trees down, because then they're gonna die and they're gonna rot and the dam's in greater danger. She said, Ken, what's downstream? Because you're only talking about an acre's worth of water. And really, there's nothing downstream for quite a way that if indeed it failed, the likelihood, she said, of it catastrophically failing is not going to be the case. And she said what she would recommend is that you leave it as is. And if indeed the roots or whatever varmints are living around the roots actually do cause the dam to leak, it will start to leak first. And you can take care of that particular issue rather than coming in and trying to basically rebuild the whole dam. Because it's, it's not like a few trees on there, it's basically wooded. That was her
You
recommendation.
can use pond liner, EPDM, or you can do bentonite. There are ways to seal up a dam
If
at
indeed
reasonable
it's-
cost if it needed.
If it needs it, and that was kind of her recommendation.
Wait till it breaks and then fix it.
Well, wait till it starts to leak.
Yeah.
And it looked like it was in pretty good shape, but As you know, Phil probably is going to be digging a hole through there at some point.
So we need some more.
So is Ms. Fredericks gonna prepare a report
No.
or?
That was just a discussion that I had with her. I talked to her about, if we should spend the money at this point to get a geotech involved, who's going to come in and tell us the same thing, that trees are a no-no on a dam. But that was her more or less off the record recommendation.
I think sound. That's my.
And what we did do is we came in, put a riprap, we redid the overflow so that it actually goes back down to the creek where it belongs instead, and then are calling for the repair of that gorge that it has carved. Yeah, we were gonna put a little bridge over that.
Yeah, that's a great
overflow.
solution, and it's about as cheap as we can get away with without being cheap. Without, I mean, it's
Inexpensive.
a frugal solution. Yeah. So. Yeah, that's great. And is there anything that we're contemplating doing with that tiny little pond that's upstream? Because that's a that's the nicest little place there, and we could put a bench, and it could be just a little retreat.
Does that permanently have water in it?
Yeah,
or
well, it
just
seems
have-
to. It's at least it's an ephemeral pond that's worth having, because the critters that are having the most trouble these days, other than birds,
And
like the reptile salamanders and frogs and those kinds of things, and that's where it's a great habitat for them. So
And just so I did explore that. I actually took the trail that goes around the large pond. And my first go around, I actually had it only on the western half of the pond. Once we came across the creek, I angled it on up and actually went across the dam on the smaller pond, and then it came on back down. But all the hiking that I've done, a lot of times I like to go off trail and just kind of explore. And I was thinking, well, that's a perfect kind of hidden gem that some people are going to find. And that was kind of my thought on it.
So to summarize, we're not doing anything to remove the water feature. We're just not making it easily accessible.
can we improve it a little bit? I mean, maybe
certainly.
if we dug it down and put a little clay on the upslope side of the dam to make it retain water a little bit. I mean, I don't know, it may retain water just about fine,
Yeah,
but I just think it's it's too nice of a little spot to give up. And if it's hidden, well, that's fine. People will find it, as you suggest. So
Well, and again, following Mr. Scott's lead, I think for our master planning process, we're showing it retained, undisturbed. We can certainly look at how to enhance it, dig in more to the details as we move forward.
yeah, I'd just make a note of that,
Certainly.
make a note of that. Okay, so what's next on this?
For the most part, those were the highlights that I think Ms. Ripito, Mr. Keitel, and I wanted to identify. The only thing that I think I failed to mention to Mr. Keitel was potentially at that, what I would call the southern tip of the trail around the large water feature. I'd like him to explore extending that trail to the property line. Because again, we've talked about there's an intervening property that is privately owned, but the next property, the second tier property is Rockwood's Range or Greensfelder, but it's publicly held. So the idea would be is if at some point this property were to be developed, subdivided, we would want to get an easement for public purposes so we can make that connection between our facility and the county or state facility.
I appreciate that. I wondered, I even bothered to look up who owned it because I wanted to know what the issues would be getting over to the Rockwoods Range. And I think that's a great idea.
It's going to get real soft in there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, sir, but I mean, we can go further up on the hill. It's
Yeah.
one of the reasons I looked at that, as Mr. Vunich had asked me. And as you can see, the slope coming down into that, creek is as steep, if not steeper than anything
Yeah.
that we have on our property.
Mhm.
And so that connection is going to, if you're gonna have any kind of reasonable slope on it, is gonna take you a long, long, long time to get up to the top of the hill.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry, I didn't go all the way to Rockwood to see what the
no.
topo was out there, but
Well,
it's gonna
and
be,
what you just described is, I believe, Miss Tupper's bushwhacker trail. So we've addressed that now.
Yeah. I really, when I looked this plan over before the meeting, I was really impressed by the
Yes.
whole plan. I was, yeah.
Okay, so we've done nothing but shave costs. We're eliminating the expensive, extensive. Pretty soon we're gonna get, somebody's gonna pay us to put this park. Uh,
Remind.
I love the bank barn building and the concept of maybe we can use some lumber, maybe we can't. So what I like moving, so I'm summing this up here. We're probably gonna eliminate that one shade structure. We're gonna move the restrooms a little bit closer to the parking. We're gonna eliminate that long stretch downhill hard surface trail and modify the parking and those are the main.
And investigate that southern connection.
Yeah. All right. That's great. That's major progress. Ken, do you have any?
even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
Yeah, good job. Good job on this. I give you your props for taking a good swing at it. So will we, is it time to move on to the next,
Well, if I could just make one concluding statement. So the intent would be is to have Mr. Keitel go back with the feedback that she provided tonight and revise the master plan one more time. And then that would be the document I'd like to present to the Ward 6 residents as part of our public survey or our public input.
Just for clarification, was it the committee and everybody were suggesting that we take the restroom screen, you know, whether it's a screen around porta potties at this point or a restroom and move it over to where the shade structure is? Is that,
Yes.
or in that general area? Is that,
That was,
am I understanding that correctly?
I have no strong preference, but I think that's kind of
Yeah.
that would be the approach. And
I-
the other, go ahead, Leslie. Sorry.
I would be for the parking lot, either one. I don't think it's necessary to put it there. So, but maybe I don't have the same vision that someone else does about that.
Sorry, I misunderstood that. You said there are the parking lot and you're referring to where I previously said that up closer to the parking? Is that?
Correct, correct.
Okay,
Yes. I do think it's awfully handy to have one right where you park and you always know where it is.
Yeah.
But
That's
that's not a big deal to me.
in my opinion, on a master plan, I don't see any reason why you can't show two locations. You know, a location and then an optional location and
Okay.
call it good. I mean, it's a master plan.
Yep.
That's all. it is.
well, a building is also, I mean, if we can make the building attractive, we can kill two birds with one stone.
Yes.
By putting it there
Sure.
in that between Henkin Road and the parking, and then it provides a partial screen. For the, you know, on that grass island that Joe was talking about landscaping. We really
We're
need-
so limited there
is it
in
not
because,
big enough? Okay.
well, the well is right in
Oh,
the area.
yeah, sure,
And
sure.
so,
Oh,
and
true.
we can't put that drain field under parking, so I'm not 100% sure of at this point, the total amount of area that we need for that drain field.
And it needs to be accessible to the bank farm replacement, the shelter.
Correct. And,
So, yeah.
and you can see the little kind of V-shaped walkway that comes off, where the existing, where I've got the restroom shown. That's what gets you down at a 5% slope down to the shelter.
Okay, yeah, we can tidy that up a bit, but, yeah, okay. So you got plenty of guidance, I would say. More than you wanted. All right, that's great. So, are we ready to move on?
Well, Mr. Chair and members of the group, just a couple of things. Some of you were opposed to our process. We looked at Route 66 roadside park. And for the most part, the direction was put our thinking caps on and see what we can come up with. And at the end of that process, it was $1.5 million and immediately ended up out of the 5-year capital improvements plan. So I appreciate Mr. Keitel's comments about why can't we have on a master plan more than less. I think that's a good reason because we have to sell it to a lot of people and say it's a reasonable plan that'll achieve our goals, but it'll do it at the least cost to our taxpayers. So I would encourage us to be a little bit, maybe have a little sharper pencil for this master plan process, given what we went through with the Route 66 roadside park. And also, in keeping with cost cutting, I think appropriate shade structures or sails in lieu of some of the gazebos would be a preference of the department. They can be picked in natural colors, earth tones, and they can provide the same effect. And I'd like to think they're less expensive than a stick-built gazebo or one that's purchased from a catalog. So just some thoughts.
Could you say that again? Because are you suggesting that sort of a shed structure that?
Actually, just maybe some, what's they look like sails that are strung between.
Like we've got at the other park.
Yeah, at Green Pines that Mr. Keitel did. I'm not a big fan of gazebos. I don't think they're as functional as they need to be. Mr. Keitel and I probably differ on that. But all we're really looking for based upon our site visit on January 4th is to have some place where people can get into the shade. And I think that can be done simply and attractively.
So if you're talking about the ones in the fields, those
Yeah.
sails would be fine. If they're down by the lake or something,
I understand.
the leaves and the branches and the tree, it'd be a mess. They'd be
Yeah.
unsightly. It looked like
Yes.
Walgreens awnings.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's what I'm saying. I think the less we do in the meadows in terms of structure.
Yeah, okay,
The
I
better.
like that, yeah. But I mean, gazebos, they're gonna look great and people will love them, and you only need space for a handful of people and all that stuff, but.
Once again, since I'm a designer, I will put my 2 cents in, and that's all it is. In my opinion, from walking out on the site, it would be nice to have a focal point down at the end of the meadow. And I thought some kind of rustic, you can call it a shade structure if you want. I just happen to call it a gazebo because I had a hexagonal there. But I can show you all sorts of rustic looking quote gazebos that are made of, cedar trunks and has some kind of, natural shade on it, even having Virginia creeper or whatever growing up over the top of it. In my opinion, it needs something that's attractive down at that far end so that when I'm standing there and I pull in, I'm going, that's I'd like to walk down there and see what that is. As opposed to, and if you're talking about fabric sales or whatever, that to me doesn't fit in with this.
I'm talking function over aesthetics. So function is important to me to get people out of the sun and into shade as they're hiking on the trail. When I look down at the meadow, I see an area of mature woodlands that is unrivaled anywhere else in St. Louis County that I know of. So I prefer the natural setting. but you are the ad hoc group and you can debate that and make the decision and we'll do our best to implement.
What I'd like to know is how we can kind of have our cake and eat it too. I mean, if it's as simple as saying an 8x10, 8x12, 8x6 structure, what does it cost if we do it, a canvas awning thing, a gazebo and a shed roof timbers structure?
Mr. Keitel's great. One of the things that he brings to the table, besides just, I think, a real practical approach to park design, is he does a good job of estimating and he's pretty conservative and we generally are pretty close. So if we wanted to look at a few options like we've talked about, maybe that's what we can do.
Yeah, I think we need to do that before we have the master plan done, but I would say that I'm not opposed to, I mean, I've seen all kinds of shade structures, all of them look cool if people put the effort into, the thought into the design and your sail structure. I don't know what else to call it. I think that would catch my eye and say, hey, walk down there. Maybe, I mean, it might be, somebody might think a vendor set up a food truck in the meadow or something. We don't know, but there's a way to make it attractive, and we want to do exactly what Joe suggested, get the practical problem of shade along with your aesthetic question of make it attractive and make people want to go down there and get it at a minimum cost. That's the goal. And so you guys can go forth.
Quite a challenge for you there,
Figure
Mr. Keitel.
So
And-
I did wonder when I saw the gazebos in the meadow areas, what does that say for the potential for doing a control burn of those areas to make them have more native plants and less of the stuff that comes off of farmland?
The answer to that, Leslie, it's not going to be a problem because you go in with big backpack blowers is the first thing you do and blow all the leaves and vegetation away from buildings like that. You can wet it down and then the fire will burn whatever the suggested distance is from, 15 feet from that structure or something like that. And so
Okay.
it will burn around it and it will leave an unburned spot right there where Joe's sail is.
Or you start your burn at the gazebo.
You have to have a very specific detailed burn. And you have to have 6 people there, an ignition officer and a supervisor and a this and a that. And it's just a pain, but they generally go off like clockwork without a hitch. So we're not going to burn down our brand new gazebo. But you're right. That's a great thing to be thinking about. So I'm glad
Well,
you
for
brought it
me,
up,
a
but-
meadow is beautiful without anything, but everybody's got their own notion about all of that.
Well, it's
you know.
ADA though. Part of it is.
Amen.
Yeah, I understand.
And you can sit there in the shade with your binoculars and watch birds all day long. So, but maybe we start with one of your benches. So we're trying to do this at a price point. So
Yeah.
So if it's acceptable to the chair and the group members, I'll jump to the next item, which will be fairly quick.
Yep.
The department, as you know, has taken direction from the group relative to the presentation of the park and a potential draft plan to our Ward 6 residents first. The group, we met with Debbie Ward of Silver Tablet Marketing and asked her for a proposal to prepare that survey, a short survey highlighting the key components of our master plan in its draft form. I do not have it yet. And so, I think work out okay, meaning we've given Mr. Keitel a lot of fodder to feed on and we'll have an updated plan. And I anticipate having that proposal for your consideration at the March meeting. So a bit of a delay, but we'll have a better plan based upon all of your input tonight. And we'll have a proposal for getting our Ward 6 residents' opinions about what we're thinking for this particular property. So my apologies. We met almost shortly after our last meeting She's very busy, and I have her also working on a proposal for our master plan update. So I've got her going a lot of different directions. And that's all I have on that tonight.
So the next meeting we should have a draft survey.
Yep. Oh, yes. I would like to think that we'll have a set of questions, probably more than you want to send to the Ward 6 residents, but I would anticipate and request of you to kind of go through them and pick the diamonds out of the rough, and that's the ones we'll use.
When you get a draft, can you just go ahead and send us to
Definitely.
the committee whenever you have it, and we can kind of, kick it around offline or whatever, and maybe we can just steal a march on.
Excellent suggestion, and that's what we'll anticipate doing.
Do we have an approximate date to meet with the Ward 6 people?
Well, the intent was to do this more electronically, this first one. Certainly, we could, as part of that, offer an open house so that if people don't want to necessarily do it off their computer, laptop, smartphone, tablet, we can offer it here. We're open to any of your suggestions. The idea is to try to reach as many people as possible. And with the success of our online effort with Village Green, where we had over 1,000 participants, that's where I thought we should start. But we can do an open house and just could be an hour and a half at a convenient date and time for everyone. Bring people here and show them the plan and give them the survey and talk with them. That's fine too.
Can have it at the Heman Scott House. The historic structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we know somebody that lives there.
Well, you provide the food.
Um,
It's the only way to contact residents of Ward 6 by mail. You can contact them by the website, but to get direct contact with them is by mail. You don't have their email or
No.
anything like that.
And so the idea was if we do a postcard with the information about where to find the survey, in the past, it was always just a link to the website. We'll do a QR code. That'll take them directly to the survey
Okay.
now. And so, yeah, there would be a direct mailing to every household in Ward 6 with information about the website, the QR code and the information associated with that. And then if you all want to do an open house, the open house and date.
well, I think we have to do an open house at some point in this process. We start digging, right?
Well, the grant that Ken applied for to help offset the cost of our master planning process requires 2 public meetings, as I recall. The grant,
these could be public meetings. Up to you.
okay,
These are public. Why?
but the thought is to do this is just the department's thoughts. So you all are the ones that tell us what you want. The first thought was to do the draft plan through this electronic process or this using our best tools relative to the internet, et cetera. And then doing the open house when we have the draft plan, let's say at 90% or something.
Sounds good.
Well, we have our assignments. Mr. Keitel more than anyone, but if there are any other questions regarding the survey, but we'll get you the questions, the groupings of questions as soon as we can. So we'll be ready to discuss them at our March meeting.
Leslie,
Thank
do
you.
you have anything to add?
No, I'll just ask the question of, since you're talking cost here, do you already have a ballpark on what was presented tonight?
Mr. Keitel is shaking his head. No.
Okay,
Do have. The budget was like $1 million, the whole.
We have approximately $1 million in one of our future years as part of our 5-year plan. Obviously, if we can spend less and get the same bang, that's what we'll do. I like that we have our eye toward that cost component, because if we manage cost, the likelihood of the park being developed is much, much greater than not.
Yes.
Mhm. Yep,
Phase.
we need to keep an eye on that. I'm sorry, but my connection cut out some through some of that discussion, but I'll contact you directly to get more information.
Jan, you got anything? Good. Steve, anything else?
I am satisfied and very impressed.
Yeah, I'm so pleased with the progress. This is just, maybe it's because I'm close to the issue, but I just think it's great. And Ken, I can't say enough about your work here. So this is very good. Exactly right. Yeah, so couldn't be better. Okay, so the next meeting date is Tuesday, March 4th, also at 6 p.m. Will we be back will we be back at, I loved meeting at Pond, but evidently it was unworkable for some reason. We had to accommodate Leslie, but I don't think we have to do that every.
Oh, I'll be there. I can be wherever.
So do you have a preference for this building or?
Me?
No, I'm talking to Joe now. Sorry. Yeah, sure. So we will say tentatively that the meeting on March 4th will be at Old Pond Schoolhouse.
Yes.
And we'll take her from there. And we're going to make an effort to figure out how to get Zoom operational over there. So maybe we have that as an option as well in the future.
Well, I've talked to Mr. Lee, our city administrator, and he's aware of trying to do something down there to make us make the facility more usable on a more regular basis.
Sure, he's got nothing else to do, so hopefully. All right, this was wonderful. Any other questions?
No,
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Steve? Okay, we've only got two options here, so all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, guys. It was great.